Hello and welcome to the How to Thrive podcast. This podcast is hosted by me, Claire Sanders, and my sister and co-founder, Helen Silver McMahon. Together, we are on a mission to empower individuals and teams with the human skills they need to thrive, maximising performance, minimising risk, and optimising well-being. If you'd like to find out more about how we can help your practice, please get in touch via our website, www.being-human.co.uk. I am delighted to introduce you to Springbird, one of our sponsors for today's podcast. Springbird is a modern intellectual property firm supporting ambitious, fast-growing businesses with trademark and design protection that's transparent, commercially focused, and free from unnecessary complexity. Working on a fixed fee and subscription basis, they ensure clients always know where they stand. No clock watching and no hidden surprises. I've worked with Springbird for a while now, and I genuinely love their practical and accessible approach. They act as an extension of my team, giving the businesses I've worked with the confidence and clarity to focus on creativity and innovation, giving me more time to work on the areas where I can add the greatest value. Thank you to Springbird for supporting the podcast and for helping businesses protect what matters most. You can find out more about their work at www.springbirdip.com.
We need more freaky goats. We don't need more excellent sheep. We need people who think differently, who see the world through a different lens.
Hello, Helen. Welcome to this week's episode of How to Thrive. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Slightly amused by the fact that we've had some technical issues this morning. The last one of which was Claire just leaving.
Honestly, it's Sunday morning. Let's paint the picture for our listeners. It's Sunday morning. I'm a little bit jaded. We had a very busy week last week, which I'm sure we'll come and talk about. We record on Riverside every time one of us can't get our mics to work or our headphones to work. But today is particularly special because I've just been pressing the leave button instead of record, listeners. It's all too much. But probably, I reckon there's something in this to do with the systems. They're not making it easy for me to succeed. I'm going to blame Riverside. Not my complete ineptitude. Oh, Lord. Anyway, how are you doing? How's your week been? How was Russell Howard? Because you went and had a good giggle at Russell Howard, didn't you, last week?
So Thursday was the longest day of my life so far, in a good way, right?
Dramatic.
I know, right? But to set the scene for the listener, as you've just done, I got the 5 o'clock train, which means that I have to get up, obviously, pre-5 o'clock, and
quarter to
get dressed in the dark, which is always dangerous. Who knows what I'm going to turn up looking like, really? But I think I did all right. Anyway, got the train in, and then we had, obviously, the wonderful How to Thrive in 2026 with Caitlin and a fabulous morning of connection and learning. We'll come on to that in a moment, I'm sure. And then we stayed for lunch with our fabulous business coach, Juliet, and did a bit of strategizing, all that stuff. And then I took the train back to Ipswich rather than home to meet my husband to go and see Russell Howard, who was fabulous. We've seen him several times before. He was absolutely fabulous.
Well, enough of Russell Howard. I mean, I'm sure he's great, but he can't have. I bet he didn't. Lead a fabulous morning for in-house lawyers on Thursday morning, all about goal setting. Did he?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
Yeah. So first event of the year, workshop of the year on Thursday morning, where we got together. Yeah, about 45, 46 in-house lawyers and spent that all-important pause that we talk about, and spent some time thinking about how we all want to show up as individuals, as leaders, as members of a team in 2026. Never fails to remind me of how much I wish I'd known earlier. And whilst I try and stick in the present, there is this quite an overwhelming sense of, if I'd only known that earlier, if I'd only known that it wasn't me, it was the way that my chimp brain is going to respond to things. I just feel that life could have been a lot easier, and also professionally I might have just been a little bit more productive. I could have maximized both. So that always resonates with me. But it was a brilliant morning. Lots of people actually I spoke to said that they'd kind of shied back a little bit from legal events at the end of last year and were kind of re-emerging, which I thought was really interesting, and maybe says a lot about kind of how people are feeling about life generally and the industry. So it was brilliant to be able to support people in that. So yeah, it was an awesome morning. Next up, it's in March, our next in-person one for the legal beagles. So that'll be all good. But today's podcast we actually recorded it in the summer. So it's a bit of an older record, but we recorded it just before we did. Actually, it wasn't in the summer. Well, it was in the summer, but we recorded it in anticipation of How to Thrive 2025, the legal event, with where we had Kay Scorah coming and talking to us about what we can learn from unusual sources. And I won't give too much away, but really, really fabulous, interesting chat with Kay, who has a very, very rich experience base to draw from. And is just all round another really insightful and amazing human being. I think you'd agree.
Absolutely. Yeah, really fab chat with Kay. Original great freaky goat. Listen on for more information on that.
Yes.
But yeah, really
love that phrase. We should all be more freaky goats. So enough of us waffling. Should we hand over to Kay?
Let's do it.
Kay, welcome. Now, I ask all of our guests before we start how they would like me to introduce them. And I have to premise that because when I asked Kay, she said, "Oh, can you just describe me as a ranty old witch or an inappropriate elder?" So absolutely. Here's Kay, the ranty old witch. But you're not really a ranty old witch, Kay, because maybe you are, but in a lovely, lovely way. So not in a bad way. But anyway, Kay, lovely for you to be here, Kay Scorah. I'm trying to remember. I was just stopping there thinking, how did we even get in contact in the first place? I can't even remember that. Was it through Paul Gilbert? Was it through Robin? I can't remember. But as soon as we started talking about all sorts of things like excellence sheep and learning from disease, I thought, oh my goodness, Kay, we need to share all of your wisdom with as many people as possible on our podcast. So I'm super excited for you to be here. Welcome.
I'm very excited to be here. And thanks for reminding me of the joy of connection. You know, people like Paul Gilbert are just amazing, aren't they? They connect all the best people.
Oh, I certainly think so. So we start all of our podcasts by asking our guests what's brought them to where they are now. You know, what's life brought you? What's life thrown at you along the way to shape who you are today? And having already had a precursor to this from Kay in previous conversations, listeners, you're in for a rich treat of a backstory. So, Kay, over to you. What's brought you to where you are today?
Right. Well, really, how long have you got? Because it's been a very eventful 70 years. Now that I have the opportunity to look back, because I'm semi-retired, I realise how much influence my very young childhood had on where I am today. So I grew up in a family where, first of all, the women were not quiet and subservient at all. My maternal grandmother had been a suffragette. She was the first woman to represent a trades union in Sheffield, which is where I was born. I grew up with some strong female role models. So that's the earliest stuff. I also went to the best primary school in the history of the world, where they had some really weird teaching techniques. Things like when we were learning to add up, they didn't write those weird squiggles that we call numbers on the blackboard. They would put a pile of apples in the room and say, okay, how many 2 apples can we make out of this pile of apples? Or we had a blackboard in the classroom, and each one of us each week would do a drawing on the blackboard. That was our art gallery, and lots of crossover between the arts and the sciences. So I think my early life was so important. And then I think I realised I went to boarding school. I got a scholarship. I better not name it because it was the most horrendous place. I realised about inequality then, because a lot of us had scholarships, but there were also rich kids. And I would go and visit these rich kids in their enormous detached houses with grounds and ponies. And I thought that only happened in novels. I didn't realise up until I was 10 or 11 that that was a real thing. So I did realise about division at quite an early age. And the other thing I realised was the gender division in academic subjects made me so angry. that because we were girls, we were supposed to do the arts. So there wasn't even the capacity to study all the science subjects because we only had 2 teachers, which is why I got myself thrown out after O-level, because I wanted to study chemistry, physics, biology and maths for A-level, but in that school I couldn't do that. When I first applied to uni, I wanted to do chemical engineering. And we went for one of those open days at Cambridge, a bunch of us from school. And I was talking to these academics about, I want to do chemical engineering. And this guy actually said to me, no. As a girl, if you want to do chemical engineering, you'd have to get 3 A's at A-level. A boy, 2 B's and a C. But for a girl, you'd have to get 3 A's. He actually said this in 1971 or 2.
Wow.
And then he said, pick something with bio in the title, because bio's girly science. So I did. That's why I studied biochemistry, because I was told engineering's not for girls.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really shocking. As recent as 1970s, that's it's shocking. So did that then like the fight in you? Because I feel like from an early age, it was like you have felt this real sense of justice.
Yes.
Or injustice, I should say.
Injustice, absolutely. It reignited the fight. And throughout my life, I've had this rage about injustice, which is constantly being reignited. I'm slightly regretful that I haven't been able to do enough about injustice, because raging isn't enough, is it? We need action. But we are slowly working on it. But the rage has always been there against injustice.
So you did your degree in biochemistry, you left, and then you entered the very male-dominated world of advertising.
Yes.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Well, I did have a job in biophysics before I went into advertising. I worked in the Max Planck Institute in Frankfurt, Max Planck is a really high status research institute. But again, the only women in the lab were the cleaners. There was one academic from Egypt. She was doing her PhD in the same lab, but I just didn't see any role models. And my mum and my auntie at the time had been working in market research when we used to have interviewers who used to go around knocking on people's doors. And they said to me, oh, well, all the executives in market research, they just sit in an office all day and make loads of money. You're good at numbers, so you could do that. So I went into market research and advertising strategy. Even in that, we were in the minority. And when I first went on the board of an ad agency, I was on the board of 2 ad agencies before I walked away from that. I was the only woman in the room. Unfortunately, I still work with a lot of women who are still the only women in the room.
And maybe this feeds into a brilliant turn of phrase, if that's the right way of describing it, that you introduced me to about excellent sheep.
So when I moved into working with my clients a lot on DEI. We're not allowed to say DEI anymore, but I'm going to say it. On that journey, I came across a guy called William Derezovich. He's an American academic. And his point about excellent sheep is you may walk into a room at Harvard and there's a sprinkling of people of color and women and trans people. But in fact, that's not real diversity, because these people who make it into those spaces have the same kind of brain as the white men that we see ruling the world. They've got through the same educational system. So he calls them excellent sheep. They may look different, but they're all just excellent sheep. And when I first came across this, I thought, absolutely, I call them freaky goats. We need more freaky goats. We don't need more excellent sheep. We need people who think differently, who've had a different life experience, who see the world through a different lens. And we're not getting that, even with, however well you're doing with your DEI program, you've probably still got people who've been to Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard. rather than people who've had a really rough ride in life.
I love that. I love it because it really kind of sticks with me. And it reminds me a lot, Helen, of the conversation we had with Chris Turner, who talks about a pool of wisdom. And one of the things he says is, you know, you need the pool of wisdom because actually we need everybody's experiences to shape our knowledge and our collective wisdom. But he's kind of saying we don't need, in your terms, you don't like a whole herd of excellent sheep to feed into the wisdom. What we need is the freaky goats, because we need everybody who's involved in something. So he's a clinician, so he was, you know, a medical clinician, and he's kind of saying that we don't just need doctors to feed in, we need the doctors, the patients, the family, everybody should be feeding into the conversation, because that's how we get the richest source of information. So it really reminds me of that.
Yes, I mean, I relate very strongly to that, because I did some research on life and death communicators. So these are people who, in getting their message across, if they get the message wrong, somebody could die. So a pilot trainer or someone working in an operating theatre, if they get the message wrong, this is really dangerous. And the problem with the excellent sheep type is that they don't notice what they're not programmed to notice. And in the medical world, you quite often get the most valuable insight from the person who brings in the food or the person who cleans the bathroom, because they are noticing the patient not through the disease lens, but through the human lens. So they might say, you know, oh, I noticed that she never eats this, or I think she's actually flushing her food down the toilet, she's not eating it. So it's those insights that really help us to learn new stuff.
I mean, Helen, do you see that in the veterinary profession?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to bring everybody in to have the conversation, and you know, it is those diversity of opinion or the little things that people notice and the lens that they look through that really enriches the conversation. Because as you say, we're looking for different things, we're trained to look for different things, and sometimes we might miss the smallest piece of the puzzle that's actually, you know, huge. It's the, you know, in veterinary hospitals we often have people who kind of think they're just the person who walks the dogs, or they're just the person who does this, but actually they're probably the person who notices the subtleties of actually where that dog likes to walk. If it's not going to the toilet, is it because it doesn't like to go to the toilet on grass, it likes to go to the toilet on a different texture or something like that? So yeah, it's the nuance of different professions, but absolutely that I don't think anybody's opinion or observation should be discounted, because I think that they're all bringing something that another person may never notice, despite all their great training and all the rest of it.
And it is learning from, and this maybe is a beautiful segue into, you know, this learning from unexpected places. And one of the things that we talked about was your work about learning from disease, which I thought is a really interesting and something I'd never thought about before.
I started to get obsessed with how clever diseases are really a long time ago, when I was being a biochemist, and then I left that behind. What got me back into it was a couple of things. I was lucky enough to meet a Nobel Prize-winning scientist called Baruch Blumberg, and he identified the hepatitis B virus. It's a long story, but I found myself in a kayak next to his kayak on a lake in Maine one day.
As you do.
Yes. I'm very good friends with his daughter. That's how I know him. We were chatting away, and I said, Barry, what was the breakthrough, you know, when you were trying to identify this virus? What was the big breakthrough? And he said, it was when I broke the first rule of medical research. And I'm like, what? And he said, the rule is never anthropomorphize the virus. And it's a thing in science. You're encouraged not to pretend it's a human or pretend it's a dog. You're encouraged to look at it from a molecular level. And he said, I broke the rule. One day I just said to myself, what does this virus want? And the minute I asked myself that question, I started to realize what it was doing. And from that conversation with Barry, I started to look at all sorts of very, very successful diseases and learn about how they adapted so that we couldn't get rid of them. Ebola virus is one of the cleverest ever. It has so many strategies for survival. One of my favorite Ebola strategies is, so if you infect someone else with Ebola, they don't immediately get ill. Quite often, someone becomes infected from someone else, and they don't even know it for 6 months. And that's because Ebola goes, I'm just going to hang out here for a while. So they'll hang out in an organ that's, not that active. And they just hang out there going, yeah, this is nice, quite nice here. Yeah, I like this. And then 6 months later, Ebola goes, right, now I'm going to kill you. I mean, I'm being slightly frivolous, but it's a really, really clever technique.
I never thought of like that. That is really interesting. And then how you translate that into individual knowing or individual leadership? Is it about like planting that idea and letting it rest and then letting it grow so that it raises itself, it's got time to percolate, and maybe also exposing people to different experiences and then letting it rest, or different ways of knowing, so that it's different, they're the different organs that it infiltrates and then it rises up? Is that how you would build on on it?
So what I tend to do is, if an organization comes to me and says we need some cultural change, the first thing I say is you need behavioral change, because only through behavioral change will you change your culture. Typically, if they buy into the learning from disease, I will go in there and I'll take them through the Ebola example, and then we'll do a session on, so if we were Ebola, what would we do? We might say, well, lots of people had great ideas and we parked them, but we didn't revisit that. But Ebola did revisit. Ebola came out again. So let's go back in 6 months and look at these great ideas. So we start ideation based on the behavior of the disease or whatever else we're looking at. Your question actually was very well phrased for this, because what frustrates me is that I tend to go in and do that and I walk away and they don't revisit it. And a bit like diseases, they need to come back. They need to come back to, okay, what else can we learn? Did we make that happen?
The other thing I think you're right about is about learning from children as well. Can you say a bit about that?
I was actually thinking about you just this morning. I walked through a children's playground. There's a roundabout, and there's kids sitting on the roundabout thing, and its mum was about to start spinning the roundabout, and the kid goes, no, I'm doing that. The kid got off and started pushing the roundabout round. So there was a whole lot of lessons there. There was a status lesson, which is that kid was saying, no, I'm the boss. So what happens if you switch status? But there was also all sorts of physics and physicality lessons. So that child getting off and pushing was learning about resistance, centrifugal force, you're running around this thing and yet the middle is hardly moving at all. So it's that little child rebellion, and also things that children do that we forget how to do. But my favorite one is when you see a child in a buggy and they're putting their toes in their mouth. Now, we stop putting our toes in our mouths when we're very small indeed. But actually, if we kept doing it, we'd be much healthier creatures. We'd stay flexible. But we lose those child habits.
And this reminds me actually about conversations we've had with people about somatic coaching, and this kind of actually leaning into our bodies and leading into the systems that are around us, rather than just being stuck in our traditional kind of cognitive way of knowing. I think it kind of grows on that for me, that kind of like lessons from other things that are around us.
Yeah, I mean, body wisdom. One of the things I love to do, let's do it with everyone now, is I get people to notice body habits. So you two, fold your arms. Now fold them the other way.
It's really hard. I don't think I can. Hang on. Oh no, hang on, that one over there. Yes. No, that's the same. I can't do it, Kay.
So this is one of the things I do with people to have. Noticing your body habits has so many benefits. First of all, physically, because if we fold our arms the same way for 70 years, this shoulder is going to be further forward, I'm going to be slightly lopsided. So I have to practice doing it the other way. My other favorite one, by the way, is which foot do you put in your underpants first? Tomorrow morning, put the other foot in first. You will fall over, but that'll be fun. So
I'm so going to do that. I'm like, although I'm a bit worried about Helen, because last time I witnessed Helen, well, not putting her underpants on, but last time I witnessed her putting her socks on, she put her back out. So,
okay.
But do you know what? I think it's always my right foot. But tomorrow I'm going to try with my left. Watch this space, everybody. If next time you see me, I'm on crutches, it all went horribly wrong.
I do hope that my insurance policy covers this. So little things like that. It not only helps to balance your body, but it gives you a tiny moment of concentration that you really have to think about what you're doing, be in the moment. So it's almost a tiny meditation. So I'm very keen on people breaking habits. And in the workplace, when everyone used to go into work a lot, I always got people to take a different route to the coffee machine or a different route to the bathroom, so that you pass by someone else's desk, you notice different things around you. It really helps to build relationships and to keep people noticing. And noticing for me is the fount of creativity.
I was listening to something interesting, slightly related, about the idea of standing on one foot to practice balancing whilst brushing your teeth, because we're not very good at balancing and we never try to balance. So actually, as we get older, we'll lose balance. So we need to do small things that can improve that.
The other lovely thing about this is it can start little tiny community building things. So because I am truly bonkers, I practice standing on one foot when I'm waiting for the bus. So I'll quite often be up here on Essex Road.
You're like a flamingo.
Yes, exactly. I'll use that, yeah. I'm the flamingo lady. So I'll be waiting for the 73, standing on one foot, and then I'll shift and stand on the other. And I might do a few ballet turns, turn my feet out. And occasionally someone else will notice, usually a child, but not always, and they'll start to do it as well. And then we'll have a bit of a laugh about what we're doing and we'll get talking. So there is also a lovely community bit to this, so not just when brushing your teeth, but also when waiting for the bus.
So the other thing I was going to ask you about, Kay, was the work that you've done with reverse mentoring and the conference that you run, Turning the Table, because I think this is also carries on with this. What can we learn from other people? What can we learn from other systems? But reverse mentoring is something that I think, is becoming a fairly newer thing, certainly within the legal industry, in terms of like, what can we do? Because, but it's more established. I think I think you thought of it before almost the legal industry got onto it. But tell us a bit about your work with that and Turning the Table conference and how that transpired.
Yeah. So, I think it started about 12 years ago. I got involved with a charity called Teenage Cancer Trust. I was giving talks about communication, but also working with groups of these young people with cancer on their communication skills. I go in there thinking, oh, I'm such a goody-goody. I'm helping these young people at this charity. And of course, within the first year, I realized that I had learned so much more from them than they ever would from me, because they had been through stuff that I couldn't imagine. I'm working with kids who've had amputations, who've had facial disfigurement, all sorts of things, and also their relationships with their family. At an age when you're supposed to be breaking away, you're very dependent. And I learned a lot about family relationship from them. So I realized, okay, I'm the one learning. So I got a few of them. I'd also been working with a young refugee from Afghanistan, and a transgender guy. And I coached them all to deliver, it was a bit like a TED talk, a 20-minute talk, and invited people from the corporate world. And my instruction to the audience, it was a full day conference. Each speaker stood up, gave their talk. And then at the tables in the room, I instructed the professionals to talk about what they'd learned from that person. And I made it very clear. I said, you are not here to help these people. They are here to help you. They are the stars of the show. You are just the listeners. It was honestly the most delightful yet exhausting thing I've ever done. Yeah, that's turning the tables. Learn from those people that you think, oh, I'm supposed to help them. Well, you can help them, but they can help you even more. Our habit as relatively privileged people who are kind is to be somewhat colonial. We go, I'll teach you how to be more like me. It's the excellent sheep thing again. Well, being more like us is not helping the world, is it? I don't think our capitalist patriarchy has really helped the world very much. So perhaps what we need to do now is look for those people who've been most damaged by it and see what they can teach us.
I think that's so important with what you were just saying about the generational differences as well. What can you learn from that person? You know, if you're the boss and you're saying, oh, it's a nightmare, they're really good at protecting their boundaries. Well, that's a superpower. That's not a nightmare. We've all been wanting to be better at, doing these things. So listen and learn from them rather than the other way around, because it's going to benefit everybody in the end.
All of this feeds into kind of the work that you do around listening, and why listening is, just so important, because everything that we've kind of been talking about really comes down to this, like listening to different systems, listening to different people, and how important it is.
A lot of people have been through my listening module on LBC and all sorts of other places. I always start it with, what is the biggest lie in the organizational world? And the biggest lie is a very short sentence, which is, I hear what you say. So whenever someone says, I hear what you say, you can be fairly certain that what they really mean is, I hadn't listened to a word you've said. I've just been waiting to say what I want to say. And what I try to get people to do is really hear what the other is saying, to really, really listen to the words, to the pitch, to the speed, to the tone. I wasn't good at it myself until, I think it was when, of the many things I've done with my life, I used to go to acting class when I lived in Los Angeles. I went to acting school. My director showed me how important it was to listen to the other people on stage and not think about what my next line was going to be. Because only through listening to them could I deliver my next line authentically. And yes, I learned a lot from him as well.
But I think listening is a forgotten skill. I know that it is something I need to work on, because I really struggle to listen. I really struggle to switch off that part of my brain which is searching for the response.
I always describe it, it's like the patting your head and rubbing your tummy thing. If you practice it enough, you can really listen and still have ideas. Because, people like you, Claire and Helen, who are clever and full of ideas, we don't want you to stop having the ideas, but you can do both. It's not an either or. It's like my doing yoga and drinking wine videos. You can do both. But it is also a practice that I have practiced listening, and I have that compartment in my mind which is listening, and the compartment that is having ideas.
So, Kay, we ask all of our lovely guests, as our time is nearing, as to what their top 3 tips for thriving are.
Smiling is, for me, I get such reward. It somehow sends signals to my brain and the rest of my body that everything is okay. we've just talked about another one, which is pausing, mindfulness, however you do that for yourself. Curiosity. I'm quite envious of children and animals, in their endless, excited curiosity. I get lots of ideas from being curious. And I'm going to call it almost on the edge of inappropriate curiosity. So perhaps staring at things for a little too long or asking people questions. Yeah, inappropriate curiosity.
Wonderful to speak to you, Kay. Wonderful. Like, I feel like there's so much more as well that we could talk about. But one of the biggest lessons I learned from you is that it's, let's all be inappropriate. Like when we're older, let's be inappropriate now. Let's ask those questions. Let's be curious, and and let's be a little bit ranty. I'm certainly a little bit ranty, but maybe in a civil way. But let's challenge the norm. Let's look for different ideas. But I think, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, as I knew it would be, Kay. Really enjoyed speaking to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I love you both so much. You are amazing little sisters, and I can't wait for more.
Okay, what a lovely ranty old witch. I can't believe she describes herself as a ranty old witch. I can believe, having spoken to Kay several times, I can believe she calls herself a ranty
What did she
old
also
witch.
say? Inappropriate or something?
Inappropriate elder.
I like that. I would like to. That's what I'm aspiring to be, more inappropriate as I get older. I waste too much time worrying about what other people think at the minute. By the time I get older, I want to be like, I don't care. Like, whatever.
Be less appropriate.
Be less appropriate. Say more of what's in my head. Filter less.
Watch out, world.
I know. Imagine what a U-turn that would be.
God, that's hilarious. Oh man.
We'll blame Kay if that happens, but no, I love chatting to her.
Yeah, she's just she's another person whose just wisdom has always really struck me, and also her warmth.
Yeah,
and and her experience. Like, she just casually drops in when I was in a kayak next to Nobel Prize-winner in Maine, and then when I was living in LA and I was doing drama in here, and I was like, wow, you've had such a rich life that.
Yeah.
After recording, Helen and I were trying to persuade Kay to write an autobiography.
Yeah, I definitely think
So
we
please
should.
wite it all down.
Because I wanted to say, no, stop and go back, because I don't feel like this is not sequential. My ordered mind needs this sequentially, okay? And I want to hear and then this happened, and then this happened.
Yeah.
She's a great storyteller as well.
It's like our whole life experience shapes us who we are.
Yeah.
And so right from kind of this early age and kind of your upbringing and your sense of justice or injustice and those life experiences, right down from when she's explaining, at boarding school and not being able to do the science subjects that she wanted, right up now into, all the work she does now around diversity and inclusion and reverse mentoring and coaching and mentoring. It's all shaped by those experiences, or at least it appears to be. And it's really powerful, like that kind of is that kind of like wiggly career almost, isn't it? Like that whole wiggly path that really shapes people into who they are and who they're going to be and their contribution to the world. Just really interesting. And I absolutely love this listening to disease, her concept. Like, I find that really interesting. I mean, how does it land with you? Because obviously you've got much more of a science background than me. Well, you have a science background, whereas I don't. How does that land with you?
I think, it resonates. It works as a concept, I think. I want to hear more about it. I want to understand it a bit more. And I think that I think it's a really great, I think sometimes if we can take our thinking outside of the normal pathways that we would use and use a different kind of concept or idea, then I think that's brilliant. I think it's really brilliant. And I didn't know that Ebola could stay dormant like that. I thought it was wow. Diseases are very clever.
I'm shaking my head like I would know what other diseases do. I don't know nothing about science. I don't know nothing about science.
Yeah. I was just thinking CJD, I think, is the same, isn't it? Mad cow disease.
I've got no idea. But
So but it is also about, do you know what made me think just that? It was, about tarot reading and Victoria Smith Murphy and like tarot reading. And for some people that's like, oh, tarot reading, what's that all about? What place does that have in the corporate world or in more conventional society settings, I suppose. But it's just another way of unlocking knowing. So if the way of unlocking, lessons in how we can learn and how we can work is by referring it back to science and what we know from that, then that's really powerful. And then it's just a different way of unlocking our thoughts and our being. And that's a really powerful tool to have.
And I think it comes back down to that childlike curiosity, doesn't it? Of just exploring something from a tiny bit of a different angle. Because I think sometimes we can get into the weeds of the actuality or the facts. And actually, if we take a step back and say, well, let's look at it from a different perspective, sometimes that can be really aid our curiosity and probably maybe lead us to be a bit more creative in our solutions as well. So I could definitely see, the power in doing that. But you're right, Kay needs to write an autobiography. And I just want to hear.
We have decreed.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Very, very, very interesting lady with such rich experiences and just all round fabulous person.
Yeah.
And I love the fact she stands on one foot at the bus stop. I'm going to start that myself. Don't often take the bus, so it might be the train.
I was going to say. I think I'd be more surprised to see you at the bus stop. Oh, I should carry out with the fact that we live in rural places.
Yes,
so
I think
buses
I
are
will
not
be there
really
for a while.
thing.
Let's say like that.
Yeah. Next time we're in London, Helen and I will be spotted standing on one leg at a tube station or a bus stop.
Yeah.
So yeah. But also like her top 3 tips for thriving, smiling.
Yeah.
It's like so basic, but actually so much. And I've done a lot of smiling over the past hour and a half.
My face is a bit achy.
I do feel really.
I have to go back to the resting bitch face. It's less exhausting.
To preserve your muscles in your cheeks.
Well, I did say a little while ago that actually I'm going to give up like any sort of facial expression because it was impacting my wrinkles too much. So,
but I'm all for wrinkles, but us having smiles, I don't mind. I'll have wrinkles that show I've smiled and lived a. Remind me of this. When I'm like,
noted. Next time you're whinging about wrinkles, I'm going to be like, well, you said.
You said I've done a lot of smiling. So, smiling. I'm going to go forth and smile. It's a Friday. I'm going to smile my way into the weekend.
Yes, that sounds like a good plan. With the occasional pause. And what was her third tip?
Curiosity.
Curiosity, of course.
Big favourite of ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Really
so, and I think you're going to need all of those tactics for your gaming party that you're hosting tonight.
That'll be 6 8-year-olds coming to play Super Mario Brothers. Actually, they don't play that, do they? They're probably playing Mario Kart or I don't know, the latest. Probably just Minecraft. But it's fine because they just arrive and then don't talk to each other. They just play individually. Oh, it's sad, isn't it? I'll have to throw them out on the trampoline first. Anyway, I've digressed into a leafy lane that probably no one is particularly interested about, apart from, not even Helen. So there we go. Have a good weekend, everybody, when it gets there. And have a good weekend, Helen. And we'll all speak to you next time.
Toodaloo.
Thank you for listening to the How to Thrive podcast, brought to you by Being Human. If you'd like to find out more about the work that we do to support individuals and teams to thrive, then please check out our website at www.being-human.co.uk. A huge thank you to our amazing sponsors for this week's podcast, Springbird IP. Please do get in touch with them to find out how they can support you and your team.